You got limits, man. Whoa. Okay, calm down.
You have another piece, your most recent piece is Biden DOJ backing Norfolk Southern's bid to block lawsuits. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is just another example, I think, of an opportunity, where the Biden administration had to pick between the side of the railroad industry or a different industry and the side of workers. This is a case in which a former employee of Norfolk Southern sued the railroad company under a federal law which protects railroad workers injured on the job. And the lawsuit sort of had to do with exposure to toxic chemicals on the job. Norfolk Southern tried to block the lawsuit. The lawsuit was brought in Pennsylvania, which is not where the railroad worker had worked. Norfolk Southern tried to block the lawsuit, and they were essentially arguing that the plaintiff was involved in what's called forum shopping. So trying to find the most favorable venue to bring this lawsuit, which is, by the way, something that corporations do constantly. The case made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. Even though the case did not involve a federal law, it involved a Pennsylvania state law. And even though it did not involve the federal government, the Biden Department of Justice intervened, filing a brief on the side of Norfolk Southern and testifying at oral argument before the Supreme Court last fall. There was even a moment when Justice Elena Kagan sort of said to the DOJ lawyer, like, what are you doing here? This case doesn't really involve you. And he had some sort of convoluted answer. But it's sort of remarkable. It's just a case where the administration stepped in, took the side of the corporation to make it, a little bit harder for plaintiffs to find venues favorable to them for their lawsuits, even though, as I said before, this is something that is basically constantly available to corporations. They're always deciding what venues are going to be most favorable to them, whether it's, to register their company, to bring a lawsuit, et cetera.
So you were covering the railway potential strike, the non-strike, the negotiations. Was this kind of surreal to you to see this thing happen after your months of reporting on it?
So it's interesting. This type of derailment is like exactly the type of thing that rail workers have been warning about. It's sort of the type of thing where it's like, if you slash your workforces, if you don't make infrastructure investments, if your workers are tired, if inspection times are falling, if you're increasingly carrying, crude oil and hazardous materials on trains, like there are going to be consequences at some point. And so I think this is sort of maybe a glimpse into what the future of this industry will be if things don't change really dramatically.
Right. And of course, I think a lot of people are expecting things to come out because there's a delayed effect when you're talking about public health and environmental damage. So we've only started to see some things, but I mean, we can expect that it'll get worse, and you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to be skeptical of reassurances. I mean, we saw the EPA after 9/11. They reassured everyone they could go down to New York and start the cleanup. And of course, that wasn't true.
I mean, yeah, like we live in a country where it's completely reasonable to be concerned that, for example, the water isn't safe to drink. We saw that in Flint, Michigan as well. It seems like in this case, EPA has sort of really stepped up and is potentially, becoming more actively involved in monitoring, which seems much better than the alternative of, Norfolk Southern being the one doing inspections and that type of thing. But yeah, people, of course, have legitimate reasons to be concerned about their health.
And I know you have to run because you have another interview, but tell us what you're working on next, or what we can expect, or what we should be looking out for.
Well, so I guess what I would say is it turns out we've reported a little bit on Norfolk Southern and the railroad industry lobbying group fighting tooth and nail against regulations that would make trains safer. But there's sort of a lot more to uncover there. So we're looking into that. I think we're also really curious to see, with the proposals that are being floated by the Transportation Department, by lawmakers, sort of which ones actually have any teeth, which ones are just bells and whistles, that type of thing.